I hit start streaming on both sides.
Oh. I think we're streaming, guys. I think we're live with episode 3. So let's start this thing.
All right.
Well, welcome everybody. Hi, guys. Welcome for a special edition of Fireside Chats. Joel has a new mic, so I'm getting a little bit more professional with this. Hey, hold on. It was hot here, so I got to fix my shirt. I look like I came straight from Miami Beach or something. So welcome back. We're all still locked in our houses. It's that time, a little bit post-COVID in America. And I have 2 very special guests, 2 very good friends of mine. Kunal Patel, the CEO of BrandXR, somebody who I refer to as a tech innovator and somebody has brought the, I would say, national and international tech community together. And somebody who I admire is a former coworker and I miss very much. Somebody who's had an amazing career, and you're going to hear all about it today. Najee McGreen, all the right moves right here in the house. Connecting live from the Bay Area, who is now at Netflix. Small startup, you've never heard of this company. And very proud that you're on the show. Thank you so much. Guys, both of you are very busy, so I truly appreciate the fact that you're here today. And Najee, I'm going to start with Kunal real quick. I'm going to do a little intro with both of you guys, talk a little bit about who you are, what you do. And if you hear any kids in the background, that's okay. I know. Congratulations, you're a new dad. I know it's not easy, but I just want to say congrats on so much success. So let's start. Kunal, amazing. BrandXR. You guys are making names and waves in the VR community. Tell me about your story, where you're from, what's going on, right?
Sure. Well, we'll go back to the 80s where it all began.
Of course.
Yeah. So I was born in New York, immigrant parents. They came from India. So they came from India, met in New York, got married.
They didn't know each other.
They didn't know each other. No,
awesome.
It's like in Indian culture, it's like it's an arranged marriage. They met each other, and I want to say like they're agreed to be married like a couple weeks later. So like it's one of those things where like it's not like how we have it here, where like I don't know, you date for a while and then you fall in love and then you get married and decide to do all that. Like they met, their families met. My dad said, "Hey, I really like you. If you like me, then let's get married." And and the family just decided like, "Hey, that's this is good." And we give our blessing, and then they got married, and then they had me. So I lived in New York not too long. I was like a year and a half old, maybe. My dad had a newspaper stand in New York. Wow. And so I was just, I would hear stories of like, I would just sit there on the counter and I would be a terrible businessman. I would actually like just take things from the newspaper stand and just give it to people. Like, I don't know. I was just being very like
that's exactly what you want little kids, right? To like just give away the merchandise.
Yeah, it's like, hey, here's a stick of gum. Take this. Here's a Snickers bar. Take this. Like, you're nice. Yeah. And then I'm sure like my dad and mom were like, "No, you don't do this." Like, but and then we moved to Michigan. So most of my childhood growing up in Detroit, Michigan.
Okay, well that's actually good. But so I didn't really even get to the topic. There's a lot of things going on, and when people watch this show a couple of months or years from now, this is a time of transition in America, and I didn't really talk about the topic. But I don't want to talk about too much of the politics or what's going on. I wanted to talk and celebrate 2 friends of mine who share similar experiences. My grandfather came to this country from Cuba with $15 in his pocket. I've heard the story 100 times, and he was very successful. If I'm ever half as successful as he was, I will have accomplished something in life. I'm very, very proud of his. He never learned English, lived to be 93 years old. Wow. Had 40 employees at one point. Just built a career, and I was very proud of him. Still very proud of him. Sorry. And, I see what's happening in this country, and I don't want to focus on the negativity or it's bad enough that we have to be locked in our houses and wearing masks all the time. But I want to focus on the good things. And that's why I love your story, by the way. Your parents have an amazing story, and your story is just as good. And I wanted to bring some people on the show and talk about, the positives, the amazing things that people of diverse backgrounds and minorities have accomplished, especially in the tech sector. I'm very proud to know both of you. So sorry that I jumped in, but that's my job as a host.
Yeah.
And thank you for being on the show again. So let me hear about, fast forward a little bit. You're not giving stuff away anymore, unless a few virtual reality things. Let's talk about the now. Where you are now, is it because I've met you when you hosted this ginormous tech event, and you invited everybody in the community for all parts of the country came, and they come to Florida to meet you and your team, and I thought that was amazing. By the way, Najee, you got to come to the next one. I know. I just saw you in San Francisco like 2 months ago, but before the lockdown. Which, thank you, by the way. We had a great dinner. But by the way, you've brought so many people from around the country, from Detroit. Your partners in Detroit, and you put on these amazing events. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you have brought the VR AR community together, competitors, people from Microsoft, all these big names that you get involved into the community. And I just love it. And kids. You're a big supporter of the science.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's amazing. Well, let's talk about that. That's what I want to celebrate today. With so much negativity, I want to talk about the good stuff that's happening.
Yeah, love the kids. Part of it actually, let me go back a little bit, because it was something that I didn't realize why I cared so much, or why I did things. Jumping through many hoops until later on, when I was just chatting with a friend. Just about our past, and it was something that didn't strike me at the time on why am I doing the crazy things I'm doing, with the community and all the creative things and technical things I'm doing. So in Detroit, I was in two different parts of Detroit in my childhood. When I was really little, a little kid, I was in Detroit public schools. And, everything that you would think about it was true. Every cliche about the Detroit area was true. Just it was a rough area. It was not well funded. The school just always was lacking. They cut the arts program. So we had art class, and then all of a sudden our art teacher said hey, I'm real sorry, we're not going to have art anymore. Even science got cuts. And it was kind of, I guess, a depressing thing. But then, I guess what our teachers did, and I never fully appreciated it at the time, was they decided to teach art anyways. So our art teacher basically would pretend that social studies class is actually going to be happening. And, so social studies class would start, and then he'd peek outside the door, and then looked at the professor has actually walked, or the principal has walked by, and then saw, okay, that guy's gone. We're going to do art class anyways. And the science teacher would spend money on his own to do all the things that he wanted to do. And then, when I think about what am I doing later on in life, I'm doing science, and I'm doing things that are in art and creativity and creating video games. And so because of those two things, getting that experience, getting teachers who actually really cared about that, and then knowing that was kind of taken away from a lot of us who didn't have these teachers, that kind of shaped what I really cared about as an adult. So, when I start doing these programs, or I start doing some of these entrepreneurial endeavors, it's at the heart of it, it's really creating access to science and art, to the people who are talented, but who don't have the resources or don't have the opportunity to actually do it. So when I do things like these game jams, these 48-hour hackathons, where we get all these people from the game industry, these programmers, artists, designers, musicians, to come and rapidly prototype things over a weekend, and we get people from the space industry or the healthcare industry, it makes it so that the little guy, the person who's still in school, the person who doesn't have connections, maybe they haven't had all the ability to go and rub shoulders with everybody, they get to work on big time stuff, and they get to work with other talented people so that they can actually like get a shot. And that kind of led to creating other endeavors. Like if I wear like a billion hats, but like
you do, by the way, you do.
Yeah.
And I know that feeling. So does Najee. Since I've known Najee, he always wears like 10 hats at every startup.
Yeah.
So, look, I love what you're doing, and I love your background, and your parents' story is fantastic. By the way, I love that story. Let me bring my second guest on, Najee, who I was one of my coworkers, and one of the hardest workers I've ever met in my life. Some amazing facts about Najee. And you can buy his book on Amazon, by the way, All the Right Moves. I'll show a screenshot of that shortly. Actually, we don't even need to show a screenshot. I'll let Najee talk about it. Najee, listen, you can tell me your story. What's your story, Najee? Why don't we let the audience know your background, because you have an amazing story yourself. By the way, it comes from a long line of chess champions. And I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I had a very similar setup, actually. A lot of what you said, Kunal, kind of resonated because when I first got started, same thing. My parents met in New York, just pure serendipity, and got together again. Back in the '80s, and that's where it all started.
The '80s, man. Cheers to that.
Yeah. And as I was growing up, I was luckily put into a position where I had exposure to really good math education, science, just overall good STEM opportunities. And I guess the core part for me is like looking around. I started just getting into computers as a hobby. I really just enjoyed the things that you could do and the sort of opportunities that it opened up for you. Everything from just being able to play video games to having information at your fingertips. I'm thinking about old school stuff like Encarta or Encyclopedia Britannica, and just being able to look up things and read and learn on the fly. Whereas previously it had to have access to a library, and just information is such a powerful thing. And I think it has been for much of history. And I remember growing up thinking, it'd be great if I can share what I'm learning in the world of computers with other people my age. So growing up, I tried to start a little computer repair business because that was it's pretty in vogue at the time. This was long before titans like Dell and HP came out with their own sort of like computer repair programs and sending technicians out to your house and stuff. And I remember like my goal really was to start up a community-based education program. So the idea was, if you're still in grade school or whatnot, you can come over to our classes, learn about how computers are built, how they operate, how they function, learn how they do the things they can do. How does a word processor work? Very simple, basic stuff back then, or basic stuff in today's view. But back then, this was like magic, and some of the students went on to do great things because of that. So I'm glad of the exposure. And as far as the book, later on,
I'm plugging it right now.
I was doing like a lot of community outreach back then, especially within Black and other underrepresented communities. And I was approached by a group that writes children's books, like motivational pieces that typically you find in schools. And they were like, it'd be great to actually just capture this segment of your life, put it in book form, and we could, sort of spin it in an inspirational way. So these books were really designed for, fourth graders, sixth graders, written in simplified language so that little kids could get an understanding of the power of working hard and having a good work ethic. And, that you can actually generate your own opportunities sometimes by getting out there in the field and seeing what's going on and try to understand.
I love the picture, by the way.
Yeah.
It's All the Right Moves, the Najee McGreen story, touchdown edition, right? That's the way. And hey, listen, it's only $4.79 in paperback.
Yeah,
that's
right.
affordable.
All the proceeds go towards like schools and other nonprofits. So yeah, definitely check it out if you're interested. But again, written for.
I love it. I'm actually going to recommend it on a future. I'll bring it up, but that's not this week's book. But on a future episode, maybe we can have you in and we can read a passage.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the target audience, like fourth graders, sixth graders. But yeah, it was pretty awesome. I think so. Later on in life, I then went on to do more like IoT related things, SaaS type solutions. So help a lot of other small businesses try to. Because a lot of this tech isn't so approachable. It's not so easy to, like, if you have an idea and you want to build something, some piece of technology, maybe it has sensors, maybe it needs to be deployed remotely. How do I get a SaaS solution up and going? How do I, make it redundant and build stability into these systems that I'm now onboarding more and more users onto? And so a lot of people struggle with that, and that's where I step in to help them build up their ideas and really bring it to life.
Fantastic. Thank you. So that takes us to where we are today as business people, right? I mean, you guys are innovators in your field. Najee, ADP, you were the CTO of Brightbox, a company that, I learned a lot at. Can't retire in the Bahamas yet, but did great. And you're probably the only developer programmer that I could call, and I'd call the office, oh God, like at 10, 11 o'clock at night, sometimes 12. 1 a.m, and maybe you and Shinari were still in the office, and like, what is he doing? He's coding. It's like, oh, what are you doing? I'm helping. I'm fixing stuff. I was like amazed. It was such a great time in my life. New York, I feel bad for everything that's happening to everybody in New York right now. I call Shinari, 2-3 times a week. I call everybody, all my buddies, and but still good memories. I mean, and what I'm referring to now is because we live in this post-COVID world and everybody's still under lockdown, but good memories, man. And you're one of the hardest workers I've ever met in my life. I admire that. I really do admire hard work. And another hard worker that wears 20 hats and a proud papa, Kunal. So tell us now about what you do at BrandXR. Like, what are you doing now today? What you're doing in Detroit with Moody and your whole team, and the technology behind BrandXR. I do want to plug your business. I love what you do. You're accomplished businessman, and you have a great background too. Maybe you can touch a little bit what you did before BrandXR, and then let's touch on BrandXR.
Sure. So everything kind of flows from one thing to another. So part of my, maybe it's a mistake what I'm doing, but maybe I'm not. Maybe it's not. But I always think of like, if I'm going to do something, based on all the things that I'm doing right now, with a little bit more extra effort, like maybe 10% more extra effort, I can stand up an entirely new thing that solves another problem, but I'm not reinventing, from scratch. So that's why like there's like several hats that I wear, but it's not like a full blown hat. It's like a little bit extra effort creates something brand new. So BrandXR, it's this, SaaS-based platform, and SaaS means software as a service. It's like an online service, kind of like Netflix. You pay something monthly and you get access to something really amazing. And the premise of the company is, think of it almost like a Squarespace for AR, VR, like creating augmented reality and virtual reality and mixed reality and all the realities is really hard to do. I know this from my background, in software development, in producing video games, and producing augmented and virtual reality. It takes like lots of people. It takes lots of money, lots of people, lots of time. Really hard to do. And it's not easy to do for a lot of people that are out there. And we kind of believe that we are seeing the writing on the wall, that 3D immersive experiences is how people will be selling, marketing, training, entertaining in the future. And if that's going to be the case, then it needs to be a lot easier to do. So kind of like how, I always think of this as like the yellow pages transitioning to websites. At some point in the past, in the 90s, somebody said, yeah, you got to get on this internet bandwagon. Like, this internet thing is going to be a big thing and you got to have a website. And people thought like, wait, what, really? This internet thing is going to be a thing? I'm doing just fine on the yellow pages side. I don't need a website, and it's way too expensive and nobody's doing this. I think that's where we are within the augmented and virtual reality world right now. But just like the internet came like within 5 years, and if you didn't have a website, you were invisible. Same thing's going to happen to all of these different businesses that are out there. And if they can't create augmented and virtual reality experiences to present them,
I agree with that.
they're going to be dinosaurs. They'll be dead. So we're trying to prevent the next dinosaur, like mass extinction event of the dinosaurs. We want to stop that for small businesses when all of this AR, VR, transition happens. When supposedly Apple or Facebook releases their AR glasses, when, the Oculus Quest 3 comes out, like when it's really small and easy and it's all cost effective and it'll become ubiquitous and everybody has access to these things. These small businesses, medium-sized businesses, will need a quick and easy way to make something immersive. So just like today, they use Shopify or Squarespace or Wix to like create a website. They're going to do the same thing. Yeah.
Interesting. And you have an interesting background. You were director of innovation before and you were the creator of some games. I mean, you've been an advisor to the city's tech association, right? And you were director of Hashbang Game. I mean, you have quite the CTO and background. So I guess this is where that market is headed in the next few years. It's cool that you're one of the innovators that's doing this now. So
yeah, it's I always joke about it. I always say that I'm the least socially awkward engineer. So because of that, like I can think more on the business side of things. I can walk into like a boardroom and communicate some of the technical aspects, but do it in a plain English way. And then take some of the business stuff and bring it back to the tech folks and make them understand, like, why are we doing this? Why is this important? And that really reflects sometimes on the way something is built or why somebody should build something. So yeah, I toe the line between both. And that's why I end up kind of in CTO positions or director of innovation, in a lot of leadership positions, because I can kind of understand the tech side of things and the business side of things and where the market's kind of headed.
No, hey, listen, nothing but love, great admiration for what you've done for the community and what you're doing and you're continuing to do, whether it's the game space or bringing people from all over the country. Again, your partner's in Detroit, right? And you work a lot with the Detroit community.
Yeah. So, one of those things like, Najee, you talked about it, like creating your own opportunities, creating your own luck, that kind of thing. So for me, I don't want to wait around for something just to happen. So, that's why, like, if there's an opportunity that's maybe not in Orlando where I'm based, well, let me interface with something with another city and then create a bridge from Orlando to Detroit because there's some kind of business that can happen. And, whatever the benefits are of Orlando, which is like a lot of game developers, a lot of simulation, tech, people in Detroit need that. The automotive industry needs that. They don't have all of that, there. So when I go there, or when Moody, my partner, CEO in BrandXR, he comes down to Orlando, those connections and those businesses, that business is flowing back and forth. So, I mean, there's automotive companies, there's universities in Michigan that are, making use of talent that's in Orlando, and Orlando is making use of, talent and business in Michigan. And so now the tide kind of raises on both sides and it creates a higher likelihood of success in both places. So part of it is just like making the business happen, not just like hoping that like the augmented virtual reality business will just come. You really have to kind of like grab the bull by the horns and kind of like let people, when people don't fully understand it, you kind of help them understand what's happening, and then it becomes undeniable.
Well, that brings me another one, and I do want both your opinions on this. And maybe it's because it's a special show. It's my third show. I'm happy, and thank you for all the support for being here and the people I see online. I see we have a caller that's going to come in after Najee talks a little bit. With all the things happening in America, and again, I hope they're extremely relevant a few months from now or a year from now, somebody watches this old episode. Being a minority and a lot of people, I don't go around announcing I'm Cuban all the time or something, but I do feel that tech is a place where you can stand out. You can be a leader, and I don't know if that's been maybe you can give me your your experience, right? And I want to say, I actually think I've seen you as a leader of somebody, with this background that can inspire people. Do you feel that this is a field where you have that opportunity, which might not be available to everybody? And maybe I'm going on a tangent on this. Maybe it's too wide of a question, but do you feel that you've been able to make a difference because of that? Has it held you back? Has it helped you push forward? Is it too wide of a question? I was aiming at Kunal a little bit here. Because all the things you do with kids. If I'm a kid and I'm a person of color and I'm a minority, and I see a CEO who's making all this change. He's got a VR company, an AR company. He's putting on a game developers conference, right? And mostly in a world that I don't see representation. I'm pretty proud of it, but does it bring you joy and pride, and are you happy to be representing? I'm trying to focus on the positive, not anything that's happening out there in the real world.
For me, Najee, I won't speak for you, but for me, it brings a lot of joy because growing up in Detroit,
Sorry, I know it's like a loaded question, but
I want to celebrate what you guys are doing. It is what it is. Honestly, all my friends are black.
Yeah,
and that's like a typical thing to say these days. Oh, I've got a black friend. I know what's going on. No, I literally that was who was around me, and there weren't a lot of resources. There wasn't a lot of opportunity. I totally saw it happen, and then because later on when I got older, we moved to the burbs, and all my friends were now white. And it was funny because in elementary school, there was one white kid who came to the school. His name was Justin. It was like we saw a unicorn, and it was oh my God, we got to be friends with Justin. There's the one white kid that we knew, and then we moved to the burbs, and everybody was white, and there was only one kid named Rod, and he was black. It was a totally flip-flop experience, but I saw in terms of resources and access to things, it just. In Detroit, it just wasn't there, and in the burbs, it was there, and the access to things really did affect things, and I think that affects how I feel about things. But
now you're a leader. You're shaping young minds. And again, for anybody who's tuning in, this event is amazing. He puts it out at the Science Center. You bring in all these coders. You do this hackathon with teenagers from and people who were inspired to want to go into gaming, and it was one of the most diverse groups of people I've ever seen. And this is year on year. Was it 4 years you've done this?
7 years.
7 years. Okay. So I've only been participating for 4, but every time I go back, it's packed. All the pizzas run out very quickly. I didn't even get one. And then there's a line, and there's a lot of girls. You've really tech tends to be just men. You've really brought in diversity, women, all sorts of backgrounds. Kids that looked at their friend. It's not like high school where there's this clique and that clique.
Right, yeah.
I couldn't tell the cliques. There was mohawks and purple and green hair and blue hair.
Yeah.
Every color of the rainbow of hair. Every piercing I've ever seen, right? And I thought it was the coolest crowd ever. I was oh my God, am I cool enough to be here? I don't know. Yeah. And it didn't feel like we talk about the 80s, right? I'm a little older than you guys, but I look back and I go it was nerdy to be a nerd, right? Now it's cool, and you brought that coolness. And again, let me bring it back. You're a minority who's a leader in the community, and I think again, I want to celebrate that. I want to say, dude, you should be proud. You've done some amazing stuff, and I think that's. I wish there was more of that conversation in the news and in tech, that we can celebrate our diversity and what people are doing. And that's why I wanted to bring to the show today. And I have another leader below me who was the CTO at Brightbox and has an amazing background with ADP. You were a global, you had a team all over the world, right, Najee? He doesn't like to brag. By the way, one of the most humble people I know in the world, smartest guy in the room, keeps his mouth just stays in the background, doesn't say anything. He's always very humble. But I have to brag about him because if I don't brag, he won't brag. So let me say, one of the smartest guys in the room. Najee, come on, you're a chess champion. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, if I may, I might just loop back on that previous question that you
go
threw
for
up
it.
there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Presentation tech. I do have to echo some of the points made earlier. I think that tech isn't perfect, and it's got its own share of issues, especially around representation. But I think one of the reasons that I think people, especially underrepresented groups, are seeing good success there is, unlike a lot of other fields and other professions, I think it all comes back to information and access. I think it's one of the few fields where it really caters to people who have like a rage to learn, or just like that urge to want to improve and go out and do things. It's one of the few fields where there's not much holding you back. If you want to go out and pull something off or do it, you can absolutely dive in, read up, learn things on the fly. There's not too many regulations bodies or accreditation bodies that are going to get in your way and stop you from doing what you want to do. And that's a really powerful thing. All of us on the call, we didn't grow up knowing the things that we do. I didn't grow up knowing all about SaaS and IoT, or even some of the VR stuff I do nowadays. This is all learned information. If you have a motivation, I think tech can really empower you to see that through. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people gravitate towards it. Not to mention the fast feedback loops. So just being able to get quick, iterative feedback about, yes, this is working. No, this is not working. Let's change tactics. And then I compare that to other industries. Other industries move at a glacial pace compared to tech these days. And then the things that tech is able to do because of that, because the feedback loop in tech is so strong and so quick, tech is constantly going into other fields and disrupting. So then we have the birth of med tech, fintech, automotive tech.
And how do you bring that tech back to good? Because like even today's news, I'm seeing like IBM's not going to do facial recognition, and Amazon's taking a step back. So it's about, how can you do good with technology? Because technology can do very bad things, obviously, right? And then you're at a media company now, and I would like to say, from an outsider looking in, it looks like one of the best representations in the industry. I mean, I can go on Netflix and watch TV from Spain, shows from India. Like they have content from all over the world. It's just amazing what the type of content shows how diverse of a company. Listen, you're an insider, so you know more than I do. But from the outside, extremely impressed. I mean, to me, it's one of the best. It's the original granddaddy of streaming, right? But very impressive, the representation and the type of product they put out there. Sorry, I interrupted. It's your interview.
You're absolutely right. Like I definitely think of tech as a tool, as a mechanism. So it's there to help people do things, whether that's good or evil, right? So I really just think it comes down to personal ethics, like understanding that you as a motivated individual, you want to make some change out there in the world. Look around for ways to improve people's lives, right? I think that's the key motivation. And I think a lot of the reason why people get into business, they usually want to improve a scenario, or they see a gap in the way we do things, or a way to improve process or improve people's lives. And they're like, why don't I just be the person to make it happen? And yeah, a lot of times we use technology and other tools to achieve that. But I think engineering has always been there in the background, constantly helping humanity just improve and get better and rework things. So to that extent, that's one of the reasons I love tech, and that's why I love this field so much. And then what it's been able to give back to me. And then to jump over to the other side, you mentioned just how do you, like representation in tech, how do you use what you're doing to send a message? Like you mentioned, Netflix has a very challenging responsibility to try to, like the types of content that it goes out and purchases, or that it puts on its platform. Every piece of content inevitably has a message embedded in it. And oftentimes these messages...
Interesting commentary there. I like that.
Well,
that was good.
Like if you decide to show one documentary over another documentary, it's saying something about the company. So I'll take an example, right?
I love the Dirty Money one, by the way. That was great.
Yeah, exactly. Dirty Money, Tiger King, Fire Festival. There's always multiple.
Those guys at Volkswagen are never going to jail. Let's just, Germany is never putting those guys in jail. Everybody works for them.
Yeah,
I learned so much from Netflix. It's crazy. Okay, sorry.
There's multiple sides to a lot of stories, and so I think.
Cheers to Netflix! Yay.
think it comes back to like, it's really hard to do sort of like unbiased journalism. And if you're going to tell a story, how do you make sure and cover it equally and try to encapsulate the full story as best as possible? Or maybe you do have an agenda. Maybe you do have a message and there's a side that you want to take and you're very clear about that up front. And I think it comes back to all of our businesses. Like when Kunal's running his business, when I'm doing my business, how do I present the information? Do I try to present all sides, or what kind of angle am I fishing for? You know, I think those are all important considerations. Just outside of the everyday heads down coding, making apps and things like that, there's a whole other aspect to technology about how do you want to use this to improve society? How do you want to see this change things? Hopefully for the better. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
That's the key. And thank you for that, because both of you have been very insightful and you both have amazing stories. I do want to get a little personal here. I want to say you come from a family of chess players, right? Come on, let's brag a little. You're not. Yeah. I mean, this is where the computational genius comes in. I mean, you're the guy who. I remember a story from our Brightbox days that 5 developers couldn't make the coding for the video player work, and one night you decided to stay there. And I get a phone call like 11 o'clock at night, and you got the video player to work. It was going to take like half a year, and all of a sudden there's a picture of Roy on the machine. I mean, come on, that was all you, right? I think that was chess. Those are all those chess moves. So who plays chess in the family? Tell me.
Actually, all of everybody in my family plays chess. So, you know, what it was is when I was born, nobody in the family played chess, but my dad was introduced to it at some point. I can't remember, but he thought it would be good to teach it to me. It's just something you know, he could do with his kid, just like, you know, throwing a ball to each other. But for us, it was chess.
What age? Yeah, what age did you start at?
So at 5 years old, he was teaching me how to move the pieces. And he didn't know how to play all that well himself, but actually that, you know, thinking back, might have been some of the initial motivation for how I got the way I am. Like seeing him power through different books and trying to learn different openings and strategies, and just trying to teach that to me. I think it instilled in me this concept of like, you know, working hard at something to get better at it and seeing the effects play out in front of you, like eventually going from, you know, being able to defeat my dad at some point. It's like, you know, it's like, oh, wow, I actually got good enough at this game. Pretty decent. So yeah, you know, he started taking me around to chess tournaments and meeting other people who share the same love and enjoyment for, you know, for that. And yeah, it went from being a hobby to something I was doing professionally for a while. So competing statewide and nationally. And then I went on in life to start running tournaments, but you know, put that aside for a second. Yeah, all of my other siblings.
There's something there. There's a determination there that I see in both of you. I mean, you know, Kunal in Detroit and you running and doing chess. I mean, there's a lot of determination there. There's some qualities that I think transcend, right? And maybe I'm just getting too meta here. But no, great answers, guys. Thank you for that. Again, I'm celebrating what you guys do. I think it's great, and I think it's that time of the show where we take in callers. Do we have a caller on the line? Hold on a second. Let's see if somebody's here. Hello.
Hey,
oh
guys.
my God, it's one of our guests from last week. It's Robert Torres from 302 Interactive. Robert, my dear friend, do you have any questions for our amazing guests today?
I do.
By the way, he's also a fellow Cuban, so I love this guy. Cheers to that.
Yeah, well, if you lived in Florida,
I got a coffee mug.
Everybody's a little Cuban, right? Just want to say thank you guys for taking the time to jump on this. I think you know, with what's going on today in this day and age, I did want to ask a few questions about kind of your experience in technology. Again, going back to maybe one of the previous questions, and being minority business owners. I myself am a co-founder, and I will say, like both of you guys, I did grow up in pretty diverse neighborhoods. And I think that aspect of itself has helped me understand communication and people at a different level. Is there any other like advantages, or even I see that both of you guys have started your own companies, that like creating diversity in the workplace has helped you guys maybe either achieve something that you didn't think was possible, maybe with not a undiverse workforce, things like that?
It's a good, excellent question. You should be a host on the show. Love it. I do. Sorry. Gentlemen, Which one like to go first?
Yeah, Kunal, you want to take it or?
Oh no, Najee, you go first.
Yeah. All right. So I guess straight off the bat, so things about being a minority business owner and how that may affect the way you operate within society. I'll start from that angle first, and I'll just say I actually view my minority background as sort of like a strength. I talked at length about the work ethic. You learn from a very early age that oftentimes you have to create your own opportunities. You got to fight for things that you want. You want to see change. Sometimes you have to be the one that goes after it and pulls it off. And then oftentimes, you might walk into meetings, you might go into certain places, and you're the only person from your background there. But while we hear a lot of discourse about how that's a really difficult thing to deal with, and it's hard to pull that off and to relate to people, it can also be a strength sometimes because you bring a unique angle and a unique viewpoint. You understand how to maybe use your background for better. So in my particular case, oftentimes I'm able to hop in on discussions and talk about how we can make a solution work for more than just the people represented in the room. So I can talk about how when you want to do language translations, it isn't as straightforward as people think, or you want to be able to do some globally distributed solution, and the way things work in another country are very different from how they work in that that one state that you grew up in and you do business in. I'm talking very abstractly and vaguely, but
dude, it is so deep. It is so deep. You're bringing tears to my eyes. That's how deep your words are affecting me. I love it.
And to something Kunal mentioned earlier, it is tricky. Oftentimes, it's such a great skill set to be able to develop where you understand both the business and the technical side of things, or whatever field you're in. If you understand marketing and you understand business, pairing business acumen with almost any field makes you so much more powerful. It's incredible how you can sort of launch yourself ahead of the rest by just understanding how this affects stakeholders, what business they're looking for when you're talking to them about an offering or a product, and being able to connect that back to the solution, whether it's technology-based, marketing, sales. When you can connect people and really understand their pain, it does wonders for the conversation and for the solution. So, yeah, I guess that's what I'll say for minority representation.
Anything to jump in, or?
I mean, I don't know. I can't follow up with that. Like that kind of covers it all. But but
it was good. It was really good.
Najee, that was great, and it's true.
Rob, you like that? It was good.
Yeah, I really appreciate that answer. I think as a follow-up question.
Well, it made me a little teary-eyed because I have to admit that he had my back in a couple of meetings, and his reason, because sales and marketing gets passionate, right? And sometimes we don't make the smartest moves. But I do remember on a one-to-one personal note here, Najee always was the voice of reason and technical and very, very, very eloquent in the way he explained things. And, we come in with ideas and how to sell a product, how to pitch it. And he would say, you know what? Joel had a good idea. That's a good idea. Let me explain why. And he would explain it in a different way. I would come in with the sales idea. And you know what? Cheers to you. You just brought back some memories and made me a little teary-eyed, but thank you, Najee. Rob, sorry, I interrupted your second question. And go. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess as a follow-up question, and maybe taking a little bit of a turn here, but is there any other challenges that you have had, being a minority business owner or the minority in, let's say the meeting room, and how you kind of navigated a situation like that? So maybe Kunal, you want to take a stab there?
Sure. Being a minority, there is a lot of diversity out there in the business world, and every industry has its own quirks, and every industry has had its incumbent players. And, when you're coming up, whether you're a young person, regardless of whether you're a minority or not, that's a challenge in and of itself to kind of establish yourself. When you're a minority, where maybe you just don't look like everybody else, that also kind of adds pressure on two sides. One, if you don't see people that look like you, there's something inherently like inside of you as a human that you're like, maybe I'm not supposed to be here. And then there's the other side where maybe, maybe the people themselves actually are doing things to like not make you feel welcome. And, that might be disheartening, but, I would say like, it's one of those things where being a minority, you kind of learn to have some grit. You learn to hear no a lot. You see some doors are closed, so you have to find another way around it. So there's some I guess like an inherent traits and characteristics of being a minority that you sometimes just develop an extra bit of grit, so you'll find a way. So I think in some ways that's a strength. But I've always found that like if you take the time to know your shit, and you
PG-rated show.
Sorry, you just get to know your shit, and like you get to you end up killing them with kindness. Like you just end up like you just have to be consistent, and you do have to keep working hard, and you have to like show up, and you have to just show that I know I have something of value to contribute here. I'm going to have valuable insights, and you'll find your way. And sometimes when the opportunity isn't presenting itself, I think being able to talk to colleagues, being able to talk to friends, being able to ask for advice in whatever community you're from, like that can help, because sometimes when you're just on your own, you may not know how to approach a situation. You may not know how to broach a conversation. You may not know what's the right way to make the opportunity happen. I would just say like for any minority or anybody that's breaking into like a new industry, your community of your friends, your friend circles, your mentors are going to be so huge for you, because like you just sometimes don't know how to tackle something.
That is true. That's absolutely true.
Having the advice on like, hey, you know what, think of it this way, or you should probably approach it this way, or say this, ask this question. Then when you go and you're trying to forge your own path in a new industry, or in a new circle that maybe you're not feeling welcome in, or you think you're not welcome, that will help you get to that next level. So I mean, I would just always like say that, like, lean into your community, lean into your friend circles, your family circles, the ones that you have close to you, and just talk about what you're experiencing, and you'll get a variety of information and advice. And filtering that is a challenge on its own, but nonetheless you can get a lot of information and ways to forge like forward.
Great answer, man. And thank you, Najee. Great answer.
Add one more thing on top of that.
Yeah, go jump in, dude. This is your show. I'm here to celebrate you guys. I love everything I'm hearing. Keep going. This is inspiring. And I hope young people.
A couple points. Yeah. Like one of the as far as challenges, challenges you might face while operating within tech, or just operating out there in the world of business, there's a couple things that have hit me personally that I definitely just remembered as Kunal was talking. So some of the things I just remember off the top of my head, just this idea of, you might know in the back of your head that you're probably gonna have to work harder than most other people. Number one, just being a business owner or being a co-founder, there are going to be nights and days where it's just you, and you have to be the one that stays up or gets on these early calls, or makes plans, because there's nobody else out there who's going to do it for you. And you have to put in that 250%. I'm talking about extreme, going all the way to make something go ahead. And so that can be really difficult sometimes. I know that a lot of people just want a calm, peaceful, easy life, and it's not easy. It's not easy to operate in these circles. And one other thing that Kunal mentioned, I like to bundle up this idea of not having a group to talk to versus having a group that you can relate to in the form of psychological safety. So there's a lot of literature out there about psychological safety. Are you operating within circles where you can be vulnerable and talk about the issues that you're facing without any repercussions, or feeling like people are going to think less of you? Do you feel safe to make mistakes, or is that going to ruin your reputation, and you're constantly second guessing yourself, wondering if it's the right thing to do, because you make a mistake and you'll have people doubting you? versus do you feel empowered to go ahead, try new things, fail, and you can get right back up on your feet and keep going?
That's fantastic. Yes.
It's hard to pull off. Like sometimes building that team that's going to have your back, no matter what happens. That's a hard thing to have. I've worked in organizations where it's very difficult to get things done because so many people are wondering who's going to be the scapegoat if this thing falls apart, or what happens if so-and-so drops the ball? Can this guy really deliver? And you just don't need all that extra pressure while you're trying to develop something new and innovative. You've already got so much else going on. One other thing I'll throw out there: when you're a minority in tech, I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, you generally don't have the same types of connections that the incumbents do. So I think it's a pretty well-known, established thing that a lot of internships, a lot of job opportunities, a lot of business opportunities come from word of mouth. They come from your connections, your inner circle, family. And I'm going to go on a limb here and say minority families generally don't have the same reach as as other folks. So that can be difficult. You oftentimes have to be the person getting out there, networking, forming new connections, getting your name out there, telling your business to everybody, and you have to be your own personal advocate. There's no like Uncle so-and-so who has an in with CEO of big company who can get you in the door. That's generally not going to happen. And the last thing I'll say is there's a common thing that happens, I think, in a lot of minority communities where I think growing up, we're taught to keep our heads down, don't be too outspoken, don't rustle any feathers too much, try to be peaceful and really keep the peace and don't disrupt too much. But then you have to contrast that against the typical business ideology of and what goes on in tech, which is, go against the grain, disrupt things, don't do things the way it's always been done. That's how we make progress, and that's how we see big changes. And that's what most businesses are. It's a vehicle for like pushing forward with a specific methodology that's hopefully more efficient than the default or what we've always been doing. And that can be really hard for somebody from a minority background to do, to have enough confidence in yourself to say, I know this is right, and I know this is something that's going to be good and beneficial to people, even when you have a world out there that's telling you, no, just go in your little corner and do your little programming and do the thing that you're being paid to do and keep your mouth closed. So those are challenges I can speak personally about.
Yeah, but 6 years ago when I reinvented myself and started going into tech, you helped give me some of that confidence. So thank you. Here, cheers. Nobody has coffee or drinks. I mean, it's almost happy hour here in the East Coast. There you go. Cheers. But I want to thank you for that. I mean, 6 years ago when I started reinventing myself, it was difficult sometimes walking into the room, and it was great to watch somebody that was the voice of reason. And Najee, you're one of those guys. I mean, you're quiet, you're in the back, but you're listening, you're knowing everything that's happening in the room. And any company that works with you is lucky to have you as an advisor or on their board, and you've been in every role, man. Director, CTO, business owner since the age of 13. So thank you for being on the show today. I think it's just amazing. Robert, great questions, man.
And
you're like one of the best co-hosts we've had.
I'll continue on
at the bottom of the hierarchy as well.
Everybody, bye, dude. So, gentlemen, we're kind of we're at the hour. That's been probably the longest show, but also one of the most informative shows. Now, I am part of the Koch Scholars Association. I'm going to share this with the Koch Scholars because I think it's one of the best interviews I've ever done in my life. And Kunal, what you're doing for the community, what you're doing with the game space, what you're doing for other small business owners and encouraging other people to rise up and do positive things, right? I mean, I want to focus on the positive. I turn on the news, I don't even want to watch it. I just don't. I love this country. My family loves this country. This country, you can fail and get back up again 3 or 4 times. You can start a business, go bankrupt, start over. People will accept you. You can, fail at something and not be good at it and go back to school. There's so much opportunity in this country. I saw Elon speaking. I think somebody asked him, why don't you hire more people from other countries and he can't in SpaceX. He can with Tesla, and Tesla's like an international community. He was talking about the opportunities this country brings. And you guys are both success stories to me. And thank you so much for joining me on my 3rd episode. Nobody even watches this yet, but they're going to, especially after hearing your speeches. And I do want to plug Netflix right now because there's sorry about this, Najee, but there's a show that's going to be on pretty soon, which is one of my favorite comics, which is The Old Guard. Just got made into a movie. Have you probably seen it already? You've seen the preview, right?
So I haven't seen it come through the pipeline, but
No way!
I don't know what the stage. I don't know what stage it's at.
So Charlize is she's the main character, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Anyways, same writer as one of my favorite comic books called Lazarus, Red Rocket, and it's amazing because it kind of shows where society is headed in this technological future. I recommend it to anybody. Lazarus, same writer as The Old Guard, which is now a movie on Netflix. And the book of the week that I'm going to recommend, I saw Dan Heath speak, is The Power of Moments. Fantastic book. I'm halfway through it. It has some amazing things, some great examples, a New York Times bestseller. I've been reading a lot in this post-COVID world, trying to stay away from the negative news, trying to focus on the positive. Guys, gentlemen, Kunal, do you have any books you recommend right now, or any comics or anything you should watch?
So I'm really glad you're a comic book reader. I like that. I haven't been able to keep up with any like comics lately. But I would say like this is a book that I've read a little bit more frequently, like a few years ago. It was called Tools of Titans. It's not a book that you read, like you need to read all the way through, like end to end, but it's anecdotes of the practices, the lifestyle, how do people operate, mental models of like highly successful people. So Tools of Titans, it's like this big book you could flip to any page and read one, each day, and it just gets you thinking of different ways of approaching problems. So that'd be my suggestion.
I wrote it down. Tools of Titans. I'm gonna go look it up. Najee, we're already past the hour, but best show ever. What do you recommend? What are you reading? What are you doing in your spare time these days?
No worries. Yeah, honestly, a lot of my tech reading is mostly books and just online news publications and white papers and whatnot. But when I do read the old hardcover or something like that, a lot of it's like finance or business oriented, and not necessarily tech. But one book I can throw out there, The Industries of the Future by Alec Ross. I thought that was a pretty good read. And then I gotta go with a tried and true one. Rich Dad Poor Dad is also just a favorite read of mine.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's not tech related specifically, but it really has a lot of good lessons in there about just like life in general and having more ownership over your future.
Yeah, that's a great one. And last comment: if you have a young person that's watching, they want to get into tech, you guys are making inroads. You're doing some great things. What would you recommend they go? Just follow your dreams? Is there any? I mean, you said perseverance, hard work. Anything else? Any last recommendations for them?
Najee, you go first. I have maybe a couple ideas, but
go for it, because I do feel that is the lesson here because we're really just paving the way, right?
Yeah. I guess I'd probably leave you with just this concept of don't go out there operating in life thinking that you see people on TV and it's not so approachable, like you wouldn't be able to pull something like that off. If there is something you want to do in life, start creating a plan to move towards it. So, VR, for example, is something that used to be super unapproachable for most people, let alone obtaining a headset. It used to be very expensive. And sorry, Kunal, I'll just use VR as an example then. One, the hardware was inaccessible. Two, the software was inaccessible. And a lot of people, they thought VR was so cool. I remember when like Nintendo or somebody or Sega came out with a headset a long time ago, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is the future of gaming. This is it. Like, we're going to move into 3D and virtual reality. And it just didn't take off. Just the tech wasn't so easy to get into. So for young people out there, I do want to impress upon you to just like understand how to put a plan together about getting into something that you like. So whether that's going out there and reading about the thing that you enjoy. Again, I'm sure Kunal's read tons of literature on VR, AR, and all the implications there, 3D rendering and modeling and rasterization and stuff like that. And, he's built himself up to where he is today. This isn't an overnight success. And same for me.
No, neither one of you are. I mean,
I learned from a book, or I learned it from another person. So I would say stay open-minded. Keep reading. Go out there and devour blogs and news articles, and really take all that information in. I think information and learning is the best thing you can do at the age that you're at. And then learn how to act upon it. Go out there and do something. That's the second most important thing. It's one thing to just read all the time, but you also got to go out there and just do something. Try something, maybe fail at it, but you know what? You're maybe going to have a success one time out of many. So that's all you need.
That's great. Kunal.
Yeah, I mean, I want to echo that for sure. Like that, that's really important. Kids, at the time, they won't realize how much time they have. They got a lot more time than adults in a lot of ways. Maybe there's like a lot of homework. There's a lot of things to do, but there's a lot of like time that they could utilize to like read up on things. Tons of blogs, tons of articles, tons of interviews, tons of like YouTube review shows on everything.
I met a kid on a plane that taught himself how to speak Korean from YouTube. I was just blown away. It's like
Duolingo and all this kind of stuff. So they've got a lot more access to things than when all of us were kids.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And by the way, Najee, when you said the words Encarta, I don't think I've heard that like forever. In 20 years. Like I was like, oh my God, I can't even believe it. Oh, I remember that. I had the CD and everything, like all the CDs and everything. But
I had like a spelling game on ColecoVision, so nobody knows what that is these days.
No, but what I would also kind of gonna give as a recommendation is don't be afraid to reach out to people as well. Like that, you can find an email address and write an email to somebody. They may not respond, but you could still go and ask for advice. When I was a little kid, I don't know, I was a teenager, maybe I was like 15. I emailed somebody that worked at Disney Feature Animation, and
great
the
advice.
person responded, and they actually said like, hey, I see that you're into computers, you're into art. You want to come for a tour at the studio? And I was like, yeah. And then, I had to, had my mom sign like some release or something like that. But like, nonetheless, like I went and was able to get a tour, and then I got to understand like how they made things. I had a contact, if I needed to like ask for something, and all it was me finding an email address online and emailing the person. And even when I think about now, like we do these summer camps where we teach kids how to make video games. We have this thing called, it's called Level Up Academy, and the website's youcanlevelup.com. But we put together this summer camp, and we were like, okay, we have to charge a certain amount for it to pay for the teachers, to pay for the course, and it was $500, for a week, and that's not accessible. That's not cheap. It's not something that's available for a lot of people. A lot of kids, a lot of parents emailed and said like, hey, is there any way that we can get into this? We can't afford it. Well, you know what? I wasn't thinking about like, we did think about like, we want to have something for kids that can't afford this, but we didn't know how to do it at the start. So we were thinking like later on, we would enable, but just the sheer fact that like a kid asked, we asked the teachers like, hey, would you be willing to have a couple more kids in class? And, we kind of put like a little hoop there. We said like, hey, could you just write a paragraph? Could you write something to us and tell us like, why do you want to be in this? And we had 3 kids write an article, or not an article, but like a couple paragraphs on why they wanted to be in video games and what they loved about it. And we let them in. We gave them a scholarship for this. We were like, you know what? You need the opportunity. We want you to be in this.
I only went to college because of Coca-Cola, so let me plug them and say it changed my life. So that's great that you're doing that, and I want to support that too.
Yeah, and so it was a case of like, you know what? These kids couldn't have afforded it otherwise, but we were glad that they were there and they got a good experience. And now I see them at meetups. They show up and they do those kind of things, and it makes me think like, you know what, that's all it took. It took an opportunity. So, but at least they reached out. If they hadn't reached out, if they just thought like, oh, it's too expensive, I won't even try, then they wouldn't have had that shot. So I would say like never think that the answer is going to be no.
Take the shot.
Yeah.
Just take the shot. Wow. Great advice, man. Both of you. Excellent advice. Thank you for being my friends. Thank you for being industry leaders and agreeing to take a chance on my new thing, this podcast. I want to thank viewstub.com, a bunch of great guys which are innovating the streaming scene down in Oviedo. And I want to thank you, Najee. I want to thank Netflix for making a movie out of this amazing comic book. Please make Lazarus. This would be amazing if they did that. I don't know who holds the rights to that. But anyways, and guys, thank you for being inspiring and, refreshing. I want to celebrate again. I hope we had a chance to celebrate your success, your stories, your parents' stories. The fact that there's a lot of love in New York and couples can find each other. That's amazing. And Najee, when we see each other at Swift Mile again, we'll definitely get some. We always go for Chinese food. It's great. I mean, yeah, isn't it weird? We always go for Asian food.
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I just realized that. Like our last 3 meals have been Asian food, but guys, you've made my day. I got teary-eyed with some of the things you said today. So I hope some of our listeners and people that are going to watch this on ViewStub feel the same way. And thank you to Code Firm for sponsoring the event. And I hopefully I'll be able to support more of your endeavors in the future. So gentlemen, have a great evening, especially Najee, afternoon, since you're on the West Coast. And I guess we'll tune in. Hopefully you'll be a caller on one of the future shows. All right, guys.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.